the Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is week number 8. We are past the halfway mark of the season. We are barreling down towards that first announced playoff committee ranking. But I'm joined by my co-host, the man who has learned how to kill a vampire in Texas. It's a chicken fried steak. Fresh. How you doing, buddy?
That's pretty good. Pretty good, Haps. Not too bad. Doing great. It's we got an exciting week. We talked about last week being amazing in football. We got this week another amazing college football weekend coming up. Games get bigger from here on out. You start looking at head-to-head matchups. Start looking at who's going to choke, who's going to rise up to meet the occasion. You mentioned the playoff coming out. The first ranking coming out November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th. That's another significant day in this country for multiple reasons. And how does someone get to that level, take that expectation, and then carry it through to conference championship weekend and beyond? But you've got to win this weekend, make a statement for those games to continue to keep mattering down the stretch.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a moment where we're going to be able to see who are true contenders for a playoff position and who is really kind of fool's gold on us right now, who has had a good start to the year. And are they really legit? Are they really a team that we should be taking serious for one of those 12 playoff spots? But hey, before we get rolling into these games, make sure you hit that subscribe button above us, hit that notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We appreciate it. It doesn't cost you anything. Leave us a comment, like the video down below. We love interacting with you guys. And with that, Fresh, let's roll on here. It is our fan vote. Folks, if you follow us on the socials, on the Twitter, we put a fan vote every week out. This week, it was really close, down to the wire. LSU is traveling to Arkansas. LSU coming off that huge win at night in Death Valley. This is another night game deep in the state of Arkansas here. At time of record, LSU is a 2.5-point road favorite. Over-under in this game is set at 55.5. Fresh, what do you got going on? Because we've talked a little bit about the Razorbacks and Sam Pittman this year. We're a little bit concerned about Sam Pittman's job, but then all of a sudden they're 4-2 right now and have a chance to beat a really good LSU team. This is going to be a tough game.
This is one of those rivalries, though, that people kind of disregard. Outside of Arkansas and Louisiana, people don't really look at the battle for Golden Boot as much of a significant deal. But for these two fan bases, this means something. And for some fans, especially in Arkansas, this is the rivalry. And this is an important thing for them. Get the game up there at Fayetteville. You're 4-2. You just come off a bye week after beating Tennessee the week before. There's energy right now is high for the Hogs. And Sam Pittman, I think the relationship in that coaching staff they've got with Bobby Petrino and him, Taylor Green at quarterback, they've made it work. We always kind of thought, all right, if something goes wrong, is that the whole other wheel's going to completely just fall off, and people are going to be, is Sam Pittman going to blame Petrino? Is the fans going to side with Petrino because the offense is good, the defense stinks? All that's kind of gone by the wayside because they picked up some wins. They've been aggressive. They've been actually fun to watch. I think also makes an important part of it. They've been a fun to watch football team. They're not boring. They're not dull. They're not sloppy. They're not going to be an elite team. They're not going to play for a national championship, but they're going to have a say in potentially who does have a chance to play for a national championship by already beating Tennessee, having a chance here versus LSU. It's an exciting little situation. Can Taylor Green keep that offense on their pace of play, on their down and distance, like they did versus Tennessee, a very good defense, like they've done all year? Can the defense continue to keep playing at an aggressive high level and tackling at the moment of impact? They got to get off the field, play smart, force some turnovers, use the crowd to your advantage, and keep building. Don't let LSU hang around on the road. LSU coming off of a massive win. We had some questions going into that ballgame of what kind of team are we going to get? They lost to USC, which USC showing to be a dud. They struggled early versus South Carolina, made a huge comeback, got fortunate by a couple of referee decisions, but ended up winning the game in the end. And then here they are. They show up versus the Lane Train. They don't lead the entire ballgame, but they find a way to win in the very end. They are gritty. They're resilient. They play a full 60, in this case, 60-plus minutes. They got a way to get a W. Was that part of the crowd, though? Was that part of the environment? Was that part of Brian Kelly and that team having a don't quit attitude? I think it's a combination of all that because we saw it a few years back when Brian Kelly went for two to beat Alabama in his first year there in Baton Rouge. They're not going to look fantastic week in and week out. They're not going to be putting up 50 points and destroying people like 50 to 20 or 50 to 10, but they're going to play a full 60 minutes and give you, they're going to compete. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, but at least they're going to be fighting. How does that energy and come off that high, how do they carry that over to Fayetteville? Is Garrett Nussmeier and that offense ready to go? Are they locked in? Are they still sort of, hey, we just beat Ole Miss last weekend. We're all good to go. How's that defense where, Weeks at linebacker played absolutely phenomenal. 18 tackles, a sack, a couple tackles for loss in there, had a big stop there in overtime. How does that team carry that juice and go forward? Because you have this game, you got Alabama, you got A&M coming up. There's a lot of the line for LSU. If you can win out, like you mentioned in our preseason preview, this team could be a dark horse in the SEC title game or a playoff team. But you can't let that win and that distraction of that win versus Arkansas become a loss because you just aren't focused. You got to come in, you get to attack early. You have Nussmeier's a solid quarterback. You have the receivers. Get vertical on Arkansas. Do what Tennessee did not do. Throw the ball. Get some distance on them. Hit them earlier. Some big explosive plays. If you get the explosive plays, you sort of take the shock and awe of Arkansas out, get a couple early touchdowns, and then you can sort of settle in. If you let Arkansas muddle this thing up and make it a 3-0 like they were versus Tennessee or a 10-3 ball game at halftime and let them continue to just hanging around, you might be sorry in the end. Just like you did at Ole Miss, you mucked it up, you played solid defense, and you found a way to win the ball game. You can't let that become the opposite in the mirror image versus Arkansas. You've got to come in and be the enforcer and take it to the Hogs. Do not let them have a chance to breathe. Because if you do, you're going to win. You get past this hurdle. You can focus on, Alabama and A&M coming up down the stretch. That are really big time, targets on UFS and LSU perspective. But this is as big as the Ole Miss game was. I think this is a bigger game for Brian Kelly. How is your team mentally prepared for this football game, and do you address it seriously? In 2022, when they went to Arkansas, LSU was on their way to an SEC championship game. They came into that game. It was really, really cold. It was a noon kickoff, and they just looked sloppy. They survived. It was not a pretty sight. They survived. They barely got through the ball game. They won, but it was not a good performance across the board. And it kind of felt like they were sleepwalking. If you had that same performance on Saturday night in Fayetteville, you're going to lose. You've got to come in there, be focused, take advantage of the opportunity, one game at a time, a disciplined approach. I've gone back and forth in this game. For fun, I kind of want to say Arkansas gets the win, but I think LSU has just enough to win. I actually think they cover by 3. This is going to be a nail-biter to the very end. The Tigers survive Fayetteville. Arkansas puts up another great fight and shows that Sam Pittman is the right man for the job there for Arkansas Razorbacks. LSU survives, wins by 3, but it's going to be a game you're going to have to watch the full 4 quarters for.
Fresh, this game is a screaming letdown game to me. And I think LSU was jacked up to no end last week against Ole Miss. And they're real excited. They're getting the Rebels at night in Death Valley. And it's a place where hope goes to die. We've heard so many times about how tough of a place it is to go into Death Valley. And especially for that game to, Ole Miss to jump out to a lead and LSU to claw its way back, force overtime, win in dramatic fashion in overtime. It just seems like this is a game where they go, and the air is let out of them. The opposite side of this is true with Arkansas. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for this football game. The question I have for the Hogs is, where are they going to get that rushing attack? Jaquindon Jackson has not been the same running back that we saw early in the year going for 100 yards a game. You take a look at Braylon Russell, what he did against Tennessee. Where's this rushing attack for the Hogs going to be going into this football game? Because what you kind of said it perfectly. If LSU is able to turn this into like a track meet type of game where we get a couple of quick long scores and we're up 14-0 halfway through the first quarter already, and you're making Arkansas turn into a team that they really aren't, then LSU is going to wind up running away with this football game. I don't think it's going to happen. I think what Arkansas is going to want to do is just do a ball control offense. We know that LSU's defense, while it has looked better in the last couple of weeks and had a really good second half last week, They still aren't an elite level team. And I'll go back to LSU's defense here in a second, but is Arkansas able to run the football and control the time of possession against this LSU defense? What you're looking for, Sam Pittman is looking for long, drawn-out drives. I want to see 11, 12, 13-play drives where it's a couple, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1. Move the chains again. You keep moving the chains and just nothing LSU can do to stop you. And it kind of defeats the will of that defense and it tires them out. Now, do I think LSU maybe had the turning point of their season last week? Highly possible. I think we're going to know a lot after this football game. I think we're going to know a ton about LSU because if they go into Fayetteville and just completely boat race Arkansas, then we're going to know that was the moment. That's the moment that LSU turned it around. That was the key moment for Brian Kelly to kind of get his control over this LSU program that we've been waiting for him kind of to grab a hold of the reins and ride that tiger across the rainbow and like sparks and fire flying out of it as well. Or are they going to get skewered by a pig here in a second? Because all the goodwill that you built up last week could be out the window if Arkansas is able to run on you and being able to take over this football game. With me for LSU, Fresh, last week we talked about LSU and said we wanted to see them get after the quarterback a little bit more. All of a sudden, that LSU pass rush came out to play. The next thing I need to see with LSU, and this is where I was diving into LSU, 3 interceptions on the year. Again, something that is not common within LSU's defense. They get after the quarterback. They get turnovers in there. They need to get Taylor Green to turn the ball over in this football game to, again, stack the box against the run. Whenever they drop back to pass, you're getting after him, being able to get an interception or 2 here. I want to see them be +2 in the turnover battle in there. That's going to be the stat that I'll be watching. That would probably be the determining factor. If LSU wins the turnover battle, they're going to win this football game. If they lose the turnover battle or it's a net 0, I think Arkansas's got a good chance. And you know what? Arkansas is kind of, because we all thought Sam Pittman was going to lose their job, I kind of started feeling bad for the dude. So I'm low-key rooting for Arkansas, and I'm going to say Arkansas in a thriller, man. Give me the Hogs in this football game.
It's one of those rivalry games where LSU fans, I think, they will admit they're scared of Arkansas because they know what the Hogs have done for them in the past.
Right.
There was, I think, a year, one of their national championship years. They ended up playing Arkansas in Baton Rouge, and Peyton Hillis and Darren McFadden and Felix Jones ran for like 1,000 yards in the game.
Right.
It's one of those that people overlook. It's Arkansas, but to them, both those schools, those fan bases, it means something more. It means the Golden Boot.
Yeah. All right, Fresh, so let's go to our next game. This one's kind of a shocker because both these teams are combined 11-1 going into this football game. We're talking about the Nebraska Cornhuskers going into the Bloomington, Indiana. The Hoosiers are 6-0. The Hoosiers are 6-0. Let that sink in for a second. A team that, again, the world's upside down right now because we got Vanderbilt beating the number 1 team. We got Indiana 6-0. Dogs and cats living together. Pure anarchy here, Fresh. Pure anarchy.
Army and Navy undefeated. It's just like, what's going on?
Yeah, again, this may come down to being one of the greatest college football seasons of all time. Nebraska going into there, they are a 6.5-point underdog. Indiana's the favorite in this game. Over-under is set at 50.5, man. Nebraska's look good. I feel like they're a young team building here. But, Fresh, what do you got on Indiana? Because we haven't talked a lot of Indiana, and I don't think many people know much about Indiana.
No, I think we've all been kind of looking at it like, oh, the schedule is what it is. This is going to be that first chance to really, is it fool's gold or legit? You got to look at the schedule. FIU, Western Illinois, there's a terrible UCLA team, Charlotte, Maryland, and Northwestern. Maryland's probably the only team on that schedule right now that had worth their salt, and they beat the junk out of them. And I think we start looking at, people look at the schedules, and do the box score hunt at this time of year. Like, they're undefeated. Who have they played? They haven't pulled off an upset that's actually been on SportsCenter or any of the shows. But they've gotten it done. And you have to say, it's Indiana. They're 6-0, folks. Kurt Signetti came from James Madison, has installed himself in there to really get this thing done. I don't care who they played. They're 6-0. They're bowl eligible. And funny enough, I think someone posted they're bowl eligible before Ohio State. And what time period has Indiana become bowl eligible before Ohio State? That right there is worth celebrating. You look at what they've done. They've been able to move the football successfully on offense, high volume, high attack, and they scored over 40 points. But this is going to be that first true test of where they are at merit-wise. You got a good combination of running backs, Justice Ellison and Tyson Cotton, 13 rushing touchdowns combined between the two of them, 738 yards total rushing. So they've been able to balance each other out, 1A, 1B. They have a solid, passing attack led by Elijah Sarrett, 29 receptions, 513 and 2 touchdowns. Across the board, they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. Rourke, who came over from Ohio, has become a very stable force at the quarterback position for them. He had a pretty solid career for the Ohio Bobcats. Comes over from Athens, Ohio, and now into Bloomington, Indiana, and has really he's regained himself. Because 2 years ago, he was fantastic. Last year, he was kind of banged up. He's got that revitalization key and factor in him that has helped drive the offense, give them some veteran leadership at the front, and help Kurt really guide that offense and build it around. It's going to take a few years, obviously, to be sustained there in Bloomington, but having a veteran quarterback there to lead the first year gives you a chance to develop everybody else. 5 different Hoosiers have at least 13 receptions. They're averaging 47.5 points a game on offense and 515.7 yards total offense a game. That's 4th best in the nation in both categories. I mean, they're moving the ball. They're putting points up. They're doing what you want to do. They're making an exciting game. If you were coming out to an Indiana Hoosier football game, you know that they're going to put points on the board. It's not going to be a 10-3 slugfest like it is between potentially Iowa and Minnesota in the past, or Wisconsin and Minnesota. You're going to see them put some points on the board, and they have something viable on both sides of the ball to make them a true, threat going down. How will that carry into this game? How will that carry going forward? Because now you get Nebraska at 5-1, like you mentioned. You get the Washington Huskies. You get Michigan State with Jonathan Smith, who's going to be a disciplined football team. You got the Wolverines, and then you got the Buckeyes. It's a good thing you already have 6 wins, because that gauntlet right there is going to make it tough for you to get 9. You're going to have to find ways to you really play hard to get those next 3 wins and get a 9 to 10 win season potentially down the road. But you've set the bar pretty solid. The rest of it from here on out is gravy, and it shows this program's ascending. It's good for the morale of the team, and it's good for recruiting. And then you have a 5-1 football team, a Nebraska, an image, a logo coming into Bloomington. This is not like, if Rutgers was coming in right now, feel like, oh, it's Rutgers, Indiana, whatever. But the logo of Nebraska and that fan base and that football tradition coming into Bloomington adds an extra little layer of intrigue to this whole entire matchup. Not to mention Dylan Raiola at quarterback, who, obviously big time recruit, name, and all that fun stuff, really carrying it over. It's not just the Indiana offense, though. The defense is giving up 255.7 yards a game. That's 6th best in the country, and only allowing 14.8 points a game. So they're doing it on one side, they're doing it on the other. Pretty solid balance, but it comes down to coaching and just giving guys the inspirational method to move forward and to be successful there for the Hoosiers. Looking at the other side, Matt Rule, we've been waiting. Usually year 3 is when his programs take off. This is year 2. There's definitely been some progress there. But now we really want to see, you have a big game. Is this really Nebraska, or are we just going to get another clunker? Is it you beat up on bad teams, you get a quality opponent, and you kind of just lay down? Is Nebraska looking ahead to next week when they play Ohio State? These are all things that are laying on my mind, because right now, statistically, they're actually not too bad. Nebraska's defense, they're allowing 11.3 points a game. That's 7th in the country. They're allowing 272.5 total yards a game. That's 13th in the country. So the Black Shirts have returned. This is the game where they have to show up. They did great at home versus Colorado. Shedeur got beat up. Travis Hunter got beat up. You're playing a full-on team here in Indiana on the road. Can the defense travel and show up and get a stop or two? If they can, we're proving this unit is legit and worthy, and they're focused and they're ready to go. If they're getting blown out or they're not showing up in force, you're going to look at, is the team actually ready, or are they looking ahead to Ohio State? And both could be true. So where is his mentality at for Nebraska right now? How does Matt Rule get the guys focused and ready to move forward? You're 5-1. when was the last time Nebraska went to a bowl game? These things are sort of weighing in people's minds. Like, get them back to the bowl game. Get them to becoming a winning football team. Get big wins on the road. Become Nebraska again. That's where these cultures really are going to clash. I I think distinct though for Nebraska is that loss to Illinois. Illinois is a ranked team. They played well, but being at home on that Friday night, everyone thought that was going to be the next brick for Matt Rule, and they had a clunker there. They lost. How do they redeem themselves with this trip to Bloomington, Indiana? We got two very fiery football coaches here, two disciplined teams, both playing well on defense. The Nebraska offense hasn't wowed me under Dylan Raiola yet. They haven't been that team's going to put up 30 or 40 points, but they're a run-first football team, putting in positions to make smart passes and not putting it all on his shoulders. But in this game, if they get into a shootout, he's going to have to show up and move the football in the air and show them why he was one of the top quarterback recruits in the country. I want to lean Indiana. I really do. I love the story. It's awesome. But I just think Nebraska is a little more of a physical football team. And we've talked about it multiple times. When you go on the road, the running game travels, the defense travels. Nebraska has some offensive linemen. They're going to own the line of scrimmage. They are going to slow down. They're going to kill the clock. And they're going to win like a 27-24, 27-20 game by running the clock and scoring some touchdowns and being the more physical football team as opposed to being some of the glitz and glamour. If Indiana wins, it's amazing. But I think Nebraska gets that sixth win, goes to 6-1. They do it in a very physical, dominant, old school way. Matt Rule kind of would make him very proud. Tom Osborne would be proud. Be that kind of fashion. But it'll be a great football game. It's a noon kick. So Indiana, you better be ready to play early. Cause those noon kickoffs, those early starts get some ranked teams when they're upset alert.
Fresh, I dove into this Indiana team, and this may be like the off example of how much Indiana used the transfer portal to bring in these players. Taking players from, you talked about Rourke, the pride of Oakville, Ontario, Canada, suburb outside of Toronto. He had a great year. Bobcats were 10-3 last season. Made a bowl game, beat Georgia Southern in the bowl game. I know he faced some injury problems last year as well. But then you take a look at all the players that came over from James Madison. This is a very interesting thing for me to look at Indiana and doing it the way they have done it. You look at Justice Ellison, like you talked about, and Lawton as well. That rushing attack is kind of tough to deal with, man. You're looking at they're averaging over 5 yards a carry. That means that Indiana's getting some push up front. Indiana, though, it's not just the fact is that this team is able to control the line of scrimmage and move the football up and down the field. They're not settling for field goals. They have 39 touchdowns on the year and only 4 field goals. That means they're finishing off drives. That means when you get into the red zone where the defense, everything tightens up and sidelines get closer and the back of that end zone gets closer, these guys are finishing drives. And that's what makes Indiana truly remarkable in this game. Nebraska, though, on the other hand, again, yeah, you pointed out to that Illinois game, and I want to know, is that Illinois game kind of a sign of a team going through growth, or is it a one-off and just was, hey, we're a young team, we weren't fully prepared for a game, it was a Friday night game, we lost our composure late because it is a tight game, window T in that one as well. You're right. Fresh, that I can't get past the Nebraska defense. That's what our challenge has been to Nebraska and Matt Rule all year is it's not the offensive side of the football for Nebraska. Nebraska's got to come back and have that black shirt defense. They've had that as well. Here's my quandary, though, and I'm going to kind of play both sides of the fence here. I'm picking Indiana to win, but I'm picking Nebraska to beat the spread here. They're getting 6.5 points. I'm with you. I think this game is really, really close. I can't see Nebraska being blown out. Like, this is not a team that's going to lose by 7 to 10 points in a game. This is going to be a tight football game. It's going to come down to the end. I would be willing to take Nebraska in the points. I feel pretty good about that pick there. But I'm going to say Indiana's going to continue this magical run because I just want it to be a fun story. Indiana winning, it becomes a fun story going forward in the year. So let's have some fun with it as well. But yeah, I'm going to take Nebraska to cover, but Indiana wins in the end.
I mean, if Nebraska wins, just imagine we have Nebraska, Ohio State, two brand name blue bloods, each with one loss facing off next week.
In the horseshoe.
That'll have people talking. That'll have people talking.
Right, absolutely. All right, Fresh, let's go. We're going to the state of Kentucky for the next one. The Hurricanes, they were off last week. They're 6-0 on the year. They're up to number 6 in the AP poll. They're a 4.5-point favorite. They are traveling to Louisville to play the Cardinals. Over-under set at 61.5. Fresh, we've talked a little bit about Miami and Louisville. I think Louisville is kind of showing us what they were. Ooh, didn't like that. But showing us what they were. What do you got for this? Miami's kind of been skating by the skin of their teeth lately, though.
Well, Louisville have back-to-back losses, which you mentioned, like they've shown their true colors right now. And I think we even kind of had in our preseason, Taylor Shaw, we weren't really fans of his, and he has shown at Texas Tech, he's shown at Oregon. He would struggle, but the issue actually isn't with him. He's thrown 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's been pretty solid. It's that Louisville defense just can't stop anybody. They didn't look very good with Notre Dame. They made Notre Dame's offense look, vaunted, and they got smoked by SMU. So can Louisville's defense against an out-of-this-world offense from Miami show up? It's another new kick, and new kicks are not kind to highly ranked teams. You get up there, you have nothing to lose if you're the unranked opponent, especially if you're the home team. How do you go out there and jump get them? If they're not ready to play, how do you jump them? This is a great chance for that Louisville defense to show up. At least get out there. I'm going to leave out some colorful language, but play hard, tackle, be aggressive. You have nothing to lose. Right now, no one's giving you a chance. If it's a new kick, they might be sleeping. Get out there and hit somebody in the mouth. Tackle, jump some routes, get something done, because Miami has shown they are vulnerable. They should have lost to Virginia Tech. They should have lost to Cal. They survived both. And jokingly, maybe the ACC office phoned in some calls during replays. I'm just saying. But Miami, they've been very fortunate. They're not an unbeatable force that we all thought they could have been. You have to be able to play a full 60 minutes and give them zero chances. If Louisville's going to do it, the offense is going to have to be able to be scoring touchdowns and not field goals, and give the defense some breaks. You need some long drives. You can't score in 2 plays. It's great if you score a touchdown 2 plays, but over the course of the game, that defense is going to get worn out. You need to sustain long drives, let your defense rest, and score touchdowns. I want to see something really from Colin Lacey, finally get himself back and healthy. What kind of impact does he have in this game? Ja'Cory Brooks, the other receiver. The two of them are going to have to be very involved in that passing attack for this Cardinal offense and catch the ball, be sustained, first downs, drives, and touchdowns. Mix in the running game here and there, but really you're going to have to be able to sustain drives and give the defense a chance. This Hurricane football team, averaging 583.8 yards a game and 400 yards passing a game. Tops in the nation in both. Are they trying to eat Cam Ward? Are they force-feeding Cam Ward in the passing game to give him the Heisman Trophy, or do they do it because they've been in some shootouts? The last 2 weeks, they've actually had to throw the ball a lot because they've been in some shootouts. And it kind of brings me to believe Damian Martinez is the big-time guy in the transfer portal, had a heck of a year out there at Oregon State the past couple seasons. He has stuff on the stat sheet, but he kind of feels non-existent. Maybe they need to start slowing down an attack a little bit and balancing the running game to help give the defense a rest and sustain some drives and kill some clock. Stop being so quick to score and throw the ball around the yard. Get after early. Play some of that time possession game. Give your defense a rest, because right now that defense, they haven't looked that great. They're allowing 18.8 points a game, but there's talent in Virginia Tech. The Hokies and Bears are moving the ball up and down the field all over them. The 18.8 points a game is because they played some much, much lesser opponents in the first few weeks of the season. Lately, they've had some breaks. They're not getting the sacks. They're not forcing as many turnovers. That defense is going to need some help. And they're not lights out athletes that are running on the field like we expect them to see, or at least we saw in the heyday of Miami football. offensively, you have to sort of change it up. And Mario Cristobal, being an offensive line and an offensive line coach, maybe you want to sort of embrace it. Let's run the ball with Martinez a little bit. Let's get the running backs lathered up and move the football on the line of scrimmage. Overwhelm Louisville while you're at it. You're going to need both because honestly, if you get in the playoff, you're going to meet much better front sevens across the way. You're going to have to be able to run the football. And if you can't find games to run the football here, you're going to be in trouble. That's what I'm looking for in this ball game. I think Miami, after the bye week, they can get themselves reset. If this was directly after the game against Cal or Virginia Tech, I think Louisville had a better chance. Miami takes care of business. But I want to see more from them. I want to see the defense improve, and I want to see the running game improve from Martinez and become a much more well-balanced contender because they cannot live and die with the past. And eventually it'll get them, and probably will get them in the playoffs if they continue that route.
Fresh, what Rocky movie is it where the trainer's screaming, throwing the damn towel?
Oh, that's
is that Rocky
one.
4? No, I think it's Rocky 4.
Rocky 4. It's Rocky 4, yeah, at the very beginning. Rocky 4 when they're in Vegas, yeah.
Right before Apollo Creed, Apollo Creed loses, killed. So everyone, if you're a Miami fan, get that meme ready. I don't think Louisville is ready for this game. I don't think that they are a team that has the power to compete with the Miami team that they should be facing going into this. Miami, if I'm a Hurricane fan right now, I hope that the Hurricanes have been pissed off for the last 2 weeks. I hope that they have come in and had the toughest practices that they've had all year long because, again, you're right. They should have lost to Virginia Tech, but they didn't. At the end of the day, it's OW in the win column. That comeback versus Cal, impressive comeback, never should have been in that position. Traveling across the country is difficult for young kids. I get it. But if I'm Miami, I am right pissed off right now, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make an example out of Louisville. We challenged Miami. Cam Ward has been absolutely everything he has been promised this year. That my Hurricane defense has looked really good. 20 sacks on the year, 10 interceptions. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of them. I think that's going to be the factor that makes this a very, very tough day for Louisville. I'm going to say this, Miami boat races Louisville in this game. I take Miami. I'm taking the points. It's what, 4.5? Yeah, I feel like this is a gimme. I don't think that they're going to be sleepwalking. I think this Hurricane team is going to be motivated, and they are going to be ready to crush the Louisville Cardinals.
And they've seen themselves drop in the ratings, the rankings the past few weeks, and it's a statement game you have to make right now. You've got to come out, assert your dominance, because right now, the voters, if they've watched the past few years, are like, okay, yeah, they're undefeated. Yeah, they're in the ACC. But from an eye-popping standpoint, Clemson looks more impressive the past few weeks than they actually do.
Right.
And that's where you have now to go, all right, we got to get tension back on ourselves. We have to come out there, put our glow on, and dominate the Louisville Cardinals.
Right. And here's the scary thing for Louisville, guys. If Louisville doesn't win this game, they're going to struggle to get to bowl eligible. Because next week they got to go on the road to BC. Then they got to go to Clemson. Then they got to go across the country to Stanford. They got Pitt. They only have one more home game after this. It's Pitt the weekend before Thanksgiving. And then they got to go to Kroger Field to play the Wildcats, man.
And they can't beat Kentucky.
I don't see, if they don't win this game, Boston College and Stanford are your only two games left on your schedule that I feel like are where you'll be the favorite in those games, and it's going to be a small favorite for there. Plus, you got to go on the road to face both those squads. I think Louisville is going to struggle for bowl eligibility here in a little bit.
Yeah, this is the Brian Brom circle the wagons. You got to come out there and get it done, or it's just going to be, hey, let's just get through, develop our players, and move on to 25.
All right. Fresh, let's go to one of the other marquee rivalry games. This game is going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee. Earlier last week, I talked about Tennessee playing in Nashville. Messed that up. Had 4 Tennessee fans call me on that one. But making sure I got the city right this go around. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee. Last time we saw this game played, amazing football game, won on a field goal. They took the goal post, threw it into the river, marched it downtown. Alabama 5-1 on the year. Tennessee 5-1. Both teams have like kind of a pretty inexcusable loss. Both teams haven't really looked like their selves from their best win of the year. This one's tough for me to call here, Fresh, because Kalen DeBoer and Josh Heupel right now are almost in the same place in my eyes. Which one of these guys is going to say, we're going to assert our dominance in this game, and we're going to say that we're not going to be left out? Because I have a feeling here, the loser of this game is going to really, their playoff chances are going to be on life support after this game.
That's the first thing I said. This is a crossroads game for both these programs. Both of them expected to probably be undefeated in great situations, or at least Alabama have one loss, but that loss would have been to Georgia. Like, that's how they kind of expected to be at the situation right now. They're both reeling. Alabama lost to Vandy. They actually haven't looked good since the halftime of the Georgia game. So what's that now? That's 10 quarters in a row where they got smoked in the second half. They got really lucky with the Ryan Williams, touchdown there, miracle athletic play, allows them to get the comeback. We're going to have to call it a comeback win because technically we're down. And then you go into Vanderbilt, you get smoked, and you look like trash for most of the game for South Carolina, and you got lucky in the end there. That effort is not going to be able to carry forward up in Knoxville if you let it. If you do, Tennessee's going to get you because that defense is elite. This is a crossroads ball game, and it doesn't just affect these two programs; it affects other teams in the spectrum. Tennessee, that win versus NC State doesn't look like that great of a win. They blew them out, great, fantastic with it, but NC State has not shown they're a true team that we all thought they could have been. Oklahoma's their true colors have shown that, yeah, they have a good defense, but that offense for Texas put up 30 plus on them, and they probably could have scored a couple more touchdowns if they wanted to. So, we're kind of like, Oklahoma's not really doing them any favors. And then you struggle versus an average at best Florida football team. You should have lost that game 3 different times, and you lost to Arkansas. We haven't seen the passing game from Nico. It's kind of been the one thing that's missing. Nico's decisions on third down, his decisions in the passing game in general, just isn't there. Dylan Sampson run the ball really well. The defense playing great. But as these games get bigger, you're going to need that quarterback to step in there and make some big boy throws. And they haven't seen that at this point. They've kind of been able to skate by. If they don't show up here on third Saturday in October with a vengeance, with a focus, with a drive, after 2 years ago winning there for the first and beating Alabama the first time in God knows how long, it's going to become, you beat them once. It was great. You threw the goalpost in the river, and that's fantastic. Kind of like what Georgia fans hear from Alabama fans. Yeah, you beat them in the national championship game. Congratulations, you won a national title. Awesome. But every other game since that and before that, you've lost. So it's the one game and the one time in 10 that you finally figure out and get it done. And that's, if you don't win this game versus Alabama, it's going to be the same thing. It's the 1 in 10. Yeah, you won 2 years ago. Congratulations. Where's the mindset of this program? Where's the cutthroat attitude from Josh Heupel and that entire volunteer football team and that fan base? If they lose that game, that's 2 losses. They still have Georgia coming up on the road later on. And I say they got to play Vanderbilt, and that's going to be an upstart team. Like, do the wheels start falling off? It becomes another learning year at the quarterback positions. This is a very important game for Josh Heupel and that volunteer football team. They've got to come in, beat Alabama 2 straight years, and 2 straight times up in Knoxville, keep themselves in the playoff race, and that win over Alabama. In terms of the head-to-head matchups, at that point, Alabama beats Georgia, Tennessee beats Alabama. Tennessee technically might have the better win, and that puts them in the viewers of the committee in a great spot. So there's a lot of things at stake there. On the Alabama side, you still have some offensive line issues. In Tennessee, you have your own issues on offensive line, especially at tackle. But Milroe, you're an athlete, but your passing ability has looked a little shaky the past few weeks. You haven't been exactly on point. You've had some bad reads. You've had some bad interceptions and bad incomplete passes. Where's your mind at right now? Did you get so overhyped in that Georgia game these past 2 weeks? You've looked a little bit below average. You have got to get your game back and play almost flawless to beat this Tennessee defense. Ryan Williams, Miller at running back, Hayes at running back. They have players. Can the guys play organized football for a full 60 minutes there for Alabama? Can Taylor and DeBoer get them to be disciplined enough to play a full physical football game? Do they change their style a little bit and be prepared for a defense that's shown that they can compete at a high level? It's a DeBoer thing. You're already getting, flack for the way he wears his t-shirts. He doesn't tuck his shirt in like Nick Saban. He's not Nick Saban. Everybody loved him until he lost to Vanderbilt and he looked rough for South Carolina. Now you start peeling back the layers of, well, you know what? You're not Nick Saban. And now the heat starts building up. If you go and lose to Tennessee after losing to Vanderbilt and struggling for South Carolina, that win over Georgia looks so far in that rearview mirror. It starts putting you in the hot seat. You've got to get the team reorganized, the program reorganized, and refocus to drive forward. This is a very important road game. It's one of those rivalries. We're talking about LSU Arkansas, where everyone kind of looks at the Iron Bowl as the number one rivalry for Alabama. But the third Saturday in October is an extremely important rivalry for both fan bases. And if you go up there and lose back-to-back times in Knoxville, the Tennessee's to take that advantage on you, that's going to be a stain that's going to hurt. And that's going to wear on you, and you start hearing from the media. You've got to get your team focused. You've got to get your team ready to play. Defensively, offensively, you've got to be locked in, special teams-wise, because Tennessee is going to come at you, and this is a hostile environment. Jalen DeBoer has not actually played in a hostile environment yet. Going to Vanderbilt was not a hostile environment. This game is going to challenge him, and you're going to have to be focused and ready to go and lock it in. Milroe, you might have to be the Superman. You and Ryan Williams. This is going to be a tough event. In the end, I think Tennessee's defense and running game get it done. The Vols win. I'm not going to say they win big, but they win by 3 or 4. And Alabama is put in a real tight spot, and subsequently Georgia's put in a tight spot because their loss is their loss to a 2-loss Alabama team, which really could hurt them down the road.
Fresh, this is a Cyndi Lauper game. You talk about teams showing their true colors. They're going to come shining through here in a minute. By Sunday, we're going to know which one of these teams is okay. They're better than we kind of thought they were at this point right now, because there's so many doubts and so many questions for them. Alabama, they got to run the football better. It can't be Jalen Milroe has run the ball 77 times right now, and that's disappointing to me, because you take a look at the combined Justice Hayes and Jam Miller, 90 attempts on the year, and Milroe has 77 on that. We've talked about this so many times in years past that these programs put such a burden on the quarterback in the rushing game that you wind up losing something, I think, a little bit in the passing game or reading defense, or you get a little more tired than you should be. I need to see Jam Miller step up. I need to see Justice Haynes step up more in this game. They need to be able to run the football against this Volunteers defense. This Volunteers defense has been very impressive on this year. It's been the one shining spot for Josh Heupel in Tennessee. The offense has not looked as good as they're supposed to. Yeah, you point at Dylan Sampson, and he's great. He has been really, really solid, but Nico has not lived up to expectations. You take a look at the wide receivers. They're not, doing unbelievable things. But that's the hard part I have, is which team is going to make me feel better at the end of the game about the questions I have about their program. You take a look at, we challenged a couple weeks last time we talked about Tennessee. We sat there and said we need to see more out of James Pierce Jr. We're seeing that now. He's wound up getting that pressure to the quarterback these last couple of weeks. You start seeing him in the backfield more and more and more. That needs to continue. He needs to give Jalen Milroe all sorts of problems all day long. The other question I have, who's going to be the guy that matches up against Ryan Williams? Are you going to put a guy out there like, which one is going to draw that assignment? Because right now, Alabama, with how their offense is facing, Ryan Williams is going to get multiple targets in this game. You're looking at probably a 10-target type of game here. Who's going to be able to stop them? I don't think you're going to be able to stop Ryan Williams at all. But are you going to be able to contain him a little bit? Are you going to be able to prevent him from breaking off that big play ability that we've seen all year long already? I don't know. I went really back and forth because I still think Josh Heupel is an amazing coach. A great guy from my interactions with him. I think the world of him. And Tennessee is at home. Give me the Volunteers, man. I went back and forth. I did not have my mind made up until that very moment right there. Give me Tennessee. I'm going to say it's going to be very, very close. I would take Tennessee in the points, especially. I know you're only getting 3 there. I do like Alabama a lot in this game, so I really almost feel like this is a coin flip game.
When was the last time that Tennessee came in to the third Saturday in October with a better defense? They are fourth in the nation in points per game and second in the nation in yards allowed per game, 10.7 points a game and 249.3. Like,
right.
It's very impressive that Josh Heupel's done this. Did he do it at the cost of his passing attack? What made him
maybe
famous? He finally figured out, like, I'm just going to play physical football and play defense and run the ball. Last year, Tennessee was up 13-0 early on Alabama, and they couldn't finish the job. Does that story change on Saturday? We'll find out.
No, we're going to find out for sure. All right, Fresh, let's go to another fun rivalry game. This is kind of like a low-key rivalry. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to go into Atlanta to face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. It's the team that Rudy got the sack in, facing Georgia Tech there. Notre Dame is 5-1 on the season. That one loss to Northern Illinois still kind of sitting out there like a sore thumb. Georgia Tech, a lot of positive things about them to start the year. You know, they're kind of out of it. They lost to Louisville and they lost to Syracuse, but they're 5-2 on the season. They're a respectable team in the ACC. Where Georgia Tech was a couple of years ago, it's nice to see them kind of pull themselves off the mat. They're not pushover anymore. But really, Fresh, you know, I keep looking at Notre Dame and saying, what do we know about them? What do we truly know? Yes, they have a great defensive backfield, but what do we truly know about this team with where they're going to be able to compete at a top tier level?
Well, I think first off, Brent Key, what he's done at Georgia Tech is downright amazing. From where they were just a couple of years ago to under Jeff Collins, who is abysmal, to where they are now. He's instilled discipline, toughness, respect for the program from the players' perspective, and it's got them to become a relevant football team. I think it was apropos this past Saturday from Chapel Hill where they were going against Jeff Collins, who was the DC for North Carolina, and they got the backdoor cover on a 70-yard touchdown run because the defense kind of just – there's a terrible call. The gap was there, took off. But Brent Key's football team, they know who they are. They're going to run the football, 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 throw when they want to, and then play physical defense. They are going to dictate the pace, the flow, and the vibe of the football game. And that right there, like we saw in the opener, I think maybe it was more profound in the opener because we thought Florida State was going to be good. But the way they came out there, it was physical against Florida State and ran the ball down their throats and hit them in the mouth. And Florida State did not expect it, and they haven't really recovered. It's that same mentality here, coming out and being physical with Notre Dame, running the football at them, killing the clock, keeping it, organized, playing in your terms and from your control perspective. That's how Georgia Tech's going to have to do it. Now, this game's not being played in Bobby Dodd. It's being played in Ben's, where there's going to be about 80% Notre Dame fans. So it was going to be a Fighting Irish home game. That's going to make some money for Georgia Tech. That's going to create another road experience. And will that become demoralizing to the Georgia Tech football team, where if they were playing across the highway in Bobby Dodd, at worst it's a 50-50 split because Notre Dame's going to travel. But now you're going, it's going to be a 20-80 split in favor of the Irish. Where's your mind at? You have to treat it like a road game, us against the world mentality, and run the football and get it done. But it's going to take a behemoth effort. But do they have the focus, the toughness, the wherewithal to take on Notre Dame? Because even with Notre Dame missing Benjamin Morrison, he's out for the year, that's a really terrible loss. And it's going to really, it's very sad to see. They still have a very solid front seven. And that front seven for Notre Dame is going to be able to get out the run and tackle and be aggressive. Where does Eric Singleton Jr. at receiver get brought in? Where's Malik Rutherford at receiver get brought in? The two of them, they've been using the running game, they've been using the pass game. How do they get a little more involved overall? What kind of impacts do they have on third down? It's not just going to be Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, and running back Chad Alexander. Get those two receivers involved a little more in the ground game, in the short passing game, but keep them involved, keep them happy, and give a different look to that Notre Dame defense, especially with the deficiency in that cornerback position with Morrison being out. You've got to find ways to be aggressive at times and maybe come out of your own shell. Being physical is great, but taking a couple of shots at times, challenging that Notre Dame secondary, getting them to back off, and then going back to the running game. The other side of the game, you mentioned Notre Dame, that Northern Illinois loss. The committee, I think, after the past couple weeks, after beating Louisville and they look okay, the committee even forgot about that game because it was so long ago. Like, Texas A&M is playing well. They beat A&M down there in Kyle Field the opening week. Has the committee kind of been distracted and not remembering they lost to Northern Illinois? I kind of think they have. And I think actually everyone in the country is kind of like, oh, well, it's forgotten. Like, they've looked good against Louisville. They looked good in all their games before that. That's a chance for here to keep building these big wins and stacking them together. And so that one loss just becomes a number. It's like, oh, you're 11-1, not you lost to Northern Illinois. You lost to a MAC school. Keep stacking the wins. Keep being aggressive. Do not be the Notre Dame of the past where you did have a couple stumbles in games that you will lose that you shouldn't have. Because I'm telling you, Notre Dame fans, they will admit there have been years where they just lose games that are completely inexplicable. Northern Illinois is one of them, but there's just games where they find ways to they just don't show up out of nowhere and they lose. You can't have that situation here. Take advantage of the moment. Go out there and take advantage of business. Riley Leonard, you've actually become looking much more like a solid quarterback. You found control of the offense. You've got them moving. They found a passing game. They found more success on the ground. It looks like what they wanted with Sam Hartman last year, a quarterback control the ball around. Riley Leonard in the passing game is starting to really evolve. It might not come in forms of the passing touchdowns, but having a viable threat, getting comfortable in the passing game is allowing their running game to succeed and become much more well balanced for the Irish. I actually think Notre Dame wins by double digits in this ball game. I think they just have too much clout on the offensive defensive lines, and they will eventually bludgeon Georgia Tech. It'll be close early, but late in the second half, the Irish will pull away and get it done and keep moving themselves toward a potential playoff spot.
You like Notre Dame and the minus 11?
Yeah. I like him. I like give me Tech in the points. I think Notre Dame wins by 10. 11 is kind of a weird spot.
It is.
Oh, you know what? Scratch that. Give me Notre Dame win by 13. They'll cover the points. They'll cover the 11.
Here's the weird thing with me for Notre Dame is this their last really good game? Because the two, we thought like the USC game at the end of the year would be a really good way to finish off the year. But that's now a joke. You got Army and Navy on your schedule. Both are undefeated, but they're both still in the American. You look at Georgia Tech and 5-2. You got UVA here in a few weeks as well. I don't know. I'm thinking about this. I'm trying to look at Notre Dame from a resume standard if I'm a committee member. And they're just so, yeah. And like you're really struggling to find the words to describe what that team is because of the schedule that they play, because they don't have Clemson on the schedule again like they did in years past. Florida State's a joke. You don't have Miami on the schedule. Well, you do have Miami, but it's Miami of Ohio. Go Red Hawks on that part. But you take a look at their schedule and what do we really think of this team? It's not a bad schedule because you do have that win against Texas A&M. You do have the win against Louisville. Louisville was ranked at the time. This Georgia Tech team is a solid football team. UVA is a solid football team. But you don't have that true measuring stick for a game for them. And I look at this and are they able to suffocate Georgia Tech's offense here? Notre Dame is a top 10 defense this season. Their pass defense is truly remarkable. But the one area where they are giving up yards is on the ground. And that's what Georgia Tech has done very, very well with Jamal Haynes and Haynes King. Both those guys have run the football very, very well. You take a look at Chad Alexander. He's had a couple of nice runs overall on the season. Where is Notre Dame needs that statement game? And I think that because of what we saw from Georgia Tech against Florida State at the beginning of the season, if you can go into Mercedes-Benz and beat the brakes off of Georgia Tech and just completely take the stinger out of the Yellow Jackets, then I think the committee members will start really going, okay, we'll put a little more respect on Notre Dame's name. But Notre Dame may be one of those teams. You're sitting at 11-1 with your resume, and they can't afford to lose another game. They can't. With their schedule, they cannot afford to lose another football game. Georgia Tech, you win this football game, and all of a sudden, things are business is booming in Atlanta. You have a nice collective that's raising that NIL. You're using the city of Atlanta to your advantage. You could probably recruit the city of Atlanta and put together a fairly decent football team at Tech. I don't know if academically they could all get in, but you could put together a pretty good football team just recruiting Atlanta right there. I'm intrigued. If Tech wins this game, what does it springboard them to? What do we see Georgia Tech become? Because it's nice to see them making these improvements, building on this program. I still think Notre Dame wins this football game, but if Tech pulls off the upset, where does this take them? Where does it put them in the eyes of maybe a national perspective, not the committee? Something that we could dive into in the recap episode.
Yeah, if Tech pulls off the upset, I think it's going to be a major boost in the arm for recruiting. Right now, I think everyone's there's still a little suspect of like, all right, things are looking good, but where's that big win going to come from Tech?
Right.
The Florida State win in the opener was great, and it was the only game on town. But we've seen Florida State be trash. You kind of maybe watered down that win. If you beat Notre Dame, again, beating logos matters from a recruiting perspective, because if a kid's looking at a brochure and they see Notre Dame, like, Notre Dame and football are synonymous. You beat Notre Dame recruiting, hey, we're moving. We're in the ACC. We're gaining steam right now. We're moving in the right direction. It makes them a truly viable option. And it gives credence to what they've been building there under Brent Keys. It just shows, can they put it all together and get on the same page and pull off that big upset? They almost had Georgia last year, in the clean old-fashioned hate there in the last game of the season. This would be that big W over Notre Dame that would reverberate, because people are going to be watching the game across the entire nation anyway. It's going to get full because Notre Dame is a national brand. You beat Notre Dame, you get noticed. On the other side, Notre Dame, you brought up that resume. It's like you go in, you're a vice principal, I'm a manager, a VP manager of my own employment. When someone hands you a resume, you can tell if it's a bare minimum resume or if it's legit, like there's substance to it. And if right now Notre Dame's, that A&M game is the only thing that's really hanging on. If A&M starts to lose the ball games, it kind of looks like a watered down resume. You're hoping other teams win to make your resume look better, which you should be doing that yourself, doing all these games, winning dominant fashion. And if you don't come out here and beat Georgia Tech, or you don't beat them heavily, and it's a clunky kind of game, that resume just gets a little bit less and less. And as great as the Army and Navy being undefeated are, the committee's not going to look and say, well, you beat an undefeated Navy team and you beat an undefeated Army team. This isn't 1947. This is not 1950. Those aren't going to carry as much weight as it would have 70 years ago. You need to get big wins. You have to get defiant wins and move forward.
Yeah. Crazy times in week 8, man. Crazy, crazy times for them. All right, Fresh, let's go to our game of the week. Obviously, it's the game that's happening in Austin, Texas. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. They're traveling to the heart of the state of Texas. The Longhorns 6-0 on the year. Georgia's 5-1, 3-1 in the SEC. Texas is a 3.5-point favorite at time of record, and over/under is set at 56.5 points. Fresh, I got some takes on this one, and I always let you go first when we're talking about Georgia, but this one, there's some things that are starting to make me really have some questions in this football game, but I'll let you go.
Well, first off, Texas is a dominant football team. We've seen it every single week. Right. They went out and they eviscerated Oklahoma. They physically dominated Michigan. They've had no trouble. I mean, the only game that actually you could even say comically they had trouble with was Mississippi State because they didn't beat them by 50 points.
Right.
They probably were taking their foot off the gas in that ball game, from the start. Offensively, whether it's Quinn Ewers, whether it's Arch Manning, the host of running backs, Isaiah Bond, Ryan Wingo at receiver, Kelvin Banks at tackle. Their offensive line is just rock solid, 5 stars across the board. This is a dominant football program that we always knew Texas could be, but Sark is kind of bringing it all together. In the past, there were years under Mac Brown where they had recruiting classes basically all convertible commits through the 6 years out. And that became a problem because those kids maybe were good early on and they weren't as good when they got to Austin. And a lot of those other players who were on the fringe went to TCU, to Baylor's, to Texas Tech's, et cetera, et cetera. Under Sark, it's been a different kind of recruiting philosophy. It's been a little more national. You're locking down the 5-star guys and you're making them work, and you're making them work in a different system. It's a different kind of Texas vibe. Even under but Tom Herman was there with Sam Ellinger, and the last time actually Georgia and Texas played in the Sugar Bowl a couple years back, that Texas team was like, oh, Texas is back, and then they flopped out real quick, and it was a 1-year done. Sark has built it a much more sustainable, in the Nick Saban blueprint, a sustainable product to take the 5 stars and actually get the best out of them, most out of them every single time. Defensively, Anthony Hill at linebacker is phenomenal. Barron at corner, Makumba at safety. We've talked about Moore at defensive end coming in there. Colin Simmons, the freshman pass rusher. They've replaced the 2 tackles. They've done it in different ways. They just have hosts of athletes across the board. Being at home, being at night, the vibe is there. Coming off a big win over Oklahoma. Everything is looking good right now for Texas. It's an exciting thing. The one question I do have for Texas is they've played the 67th, 78th, 119th, 125th, and 127th overall offenses in the country. They should be dominating all those offenses. That defense should be elite. They should be only giving up 6.3 points a game and only giving up 229.7 yards passing a game, both tops in the nation. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and they're doing it in convincing fashion. They are showing that they're the number 1 team in the country. They're not just beating teams. They're beating them with authority, and the games are over in the third quarter. And that's what a contender, a true national championship contender, can do. Coming into this game on the other side, yes, everyone knows, super dog fan over here. I have questions about leadership on this football team. Yes, there's 5 stars across the board. They've been putting up top 3 recruiting classes for the past 8-9 years. Ever since Kirby arrived, they've been top 5 or top 8 every single time. It's been pretty amazing. Look, the cupboard is not bare of talent. The cupboard right now is lacking on-field leadership from a player perspective. There's no Cedric Van Pan Granger on this football team. There's no Christopher Smith. There's no Nakobe Dean. And there's no Nolan Smith. Which one of those players in the locker room is going to be the one to look everyone else in the eye and get them to play at a standard on a level? We hear we are the standard or reset the standard and all that term. But no one on that team, you don't see them holding each other accountable to play at the standard. They didn't look like they played against the standard versus Kentucky. They didn't play the standard versus Auburn. They didn't play the standard in the first half versus Alabama. They looked very clunky in the second half versus Mississippi State. It doesn't have that same kind of vibe. The standard, the way they dominated Clemson, that was a standard game, and it kind of made it feel like, oh, they were resting on their laurels from there. But Georgia fans, we've seen them win, maybe on talent alone, but they have not dominated opponents like we thought they would be doing at this point. Whether it's Carson Beck throwing interceptions in the red zone, whether it's offensive line issues, whether they can't open the running game consistently, they've done a little bit lately, or dealing with injuries to the offensive line, looking for who's going to be the true, receiver. Obviously, one's been suspended indefinitely, rightfully so. The other one completely kicked off the team, rightfully so. Both great decisions, and I truly applaud that for getting the people out of the program. But who's that receiver who's going to step up? Arian Smith, you've had some great catches. You dropped the ball. Humphreys, they don't get the ball enough. Dylan Bell, solid receiver, don't get him the ball enough. Like, who's going to take that job and run with it? Etienne and Frazier at running back, they both shown a lot of flashes, but haven't got the consistency. Who's going to get that team to play at a high level every single snap? Like, we haven't got that point yet this season. First couple of weeks of the year, you're kind of like, it's early. They're feeling themselves out. we're in mid to late October now. You've got to figure it out. Where's that going to come in? This is a big game. You've got to show up in this big game because 2 losses in the SEC, it eliminates you from the SEC championship game and puts you on a potential fringe spot for a playoff. Because right now, the way this is looking, you're not a lock. You lost to a potential bad Alabama team, and if you get dominated by Texas, questions are already being asked. They're going to get even hotter going down the stretch. And you can't afford anything, and you might need some luck to get late in the late playoff spot. It's not a guarantee. The past is the past. What you did in 21, 22, and 23, that eventually is going to lose its luster with the committee, and they're going to see the on-field product. You've got to show up and play a full 60 minutes, which we have not seen since Florida State. They've got to come in and ready to play. Defensively, defensive line has actually been okay. They just no one can tackle them with defense. Cornerbacks, Dalen Everett, you've had some successes in your career. You've had a lot of glaring mistakes. You keep coming out there and you keep playing, but are you truly the answer at corner? Julian Humphrey, you made some great plays. You made some definitely, some errors. It's a development thing. When are you ready? Ellis Robinson, is it time to get him in there and play him at corner? He showed some flashes on Saturday. Maybe he needs to get more of a rotation. Who's going to step up at this cornerback spots and take over? We're seeing more from Bolden at safety. Dan Jackson's there. Malachi Starks, you have not played at a high level. We've got to see more from Malachi this week. This team it's lacking the juice. We've seen some late hits on the quarterback the past couple weeks, penalties letting the team extend drives. Where's that vision? Where's that collective discipline from the defense? Play in and play out, week in and week out. Not just 2 or 3 plays here, not 2 or 3 plays there, consistently across the board. That's what the team right now is lacking. Is it the departure of Fran Brown and becoming the head coach of Syracuse? Is it Will Muschamp no longer technically being on-field staff and being an advisor and being at his son's games up at Vanderbilt? Is that presence on the sideline not there, not helping him? Are players are someone waiting for someone else to be a leader from a player perspective on the team? Where's this coming from? Because right now, Mike Bowe and the offense, they're still scheming stuff up. They're still putting points on the board. But yet, they're 197 yards of drop passes technically on the season so far. Guys aren't catching the football. Beck's putting on people's shoulders. Beck's made some bad decisions, yeah, but guys still got to catch the football. It's just the lack of focus across this football team. Maybe the pressure's been there and they're not ready for it. Maybe there's some young guys who aren't ready to step up. But there's just something hovering over this program right now that the talent is there. We saw it in the second half versus Alabama. We saw it versus Clemson. When are they going to put it all together and show up? Maybe this game where people are sort of giving them zero chance is a good rallying point. To put it, it's like, you know what? We got nothing to lose. We can go into Austin. We just got to show up and play. The pressure's not on us. The pressure at Alabama, going in there with Kalen DeVore, not Nick Saban, not beating Alabama, potentially being the better team, like that was a lot of pressure on the Dogs. Maybe some of the young guys weren't ready for it right off the bat, and they got hit in the mouth with all the lights and the glitz and the glamour. This is the game that matters, because if you lose, your season could technically, for all intents and purposes, be over. You've got to be able to lock it in and go get it done. If you play a full 60-minute game and lose by 3 or 4 points, but you show complete effort, that might actually resonate in the committee's mind as a very good football team, because you are obviously playing the best team in the country. If you come out and get blown out by Texas, you're going to be written off, because if Tennessee loses, you're not really making up much ground by beating the Tennessee team. Ole Miss is on the schedule. Ole Miss ain't look that good. You ain't going to make up ground by beating Ole Miss. Like, the chances to beat good football teams are very minimal going forward if you don't take advantage of Texas. In the end, I think Kirby Smart rallies the troops. I'm going to sound like a dog homer, but I think Georgia wins 34-30 in a late drive to win the ball game. It's going to go back and forth all night. Obviously, I could see Texas winning in multiple situations, but I'm a dog fan. I'm not going to pick against the Dogs in my entire life. They win 34-30 in a very, very tight back and forth battle to save basically season, save the trajectory of the program right now, because there's obviously been some things off the field and some things right now with the way it's going on the field that have got people asking a lot of questions, and you need something to sort of stabilize and halt the energy that's going the opposite direction. Dogs survive, get the W, move forward, but Texas and them put up a classic battle.
Fresh, this game is a monumental game for the entire scope of the SEC. Alabama has been sitting on the throne for the entire time of Nick Saban's career. Now, Georgia did a great job of we were seeing the tail end of Nick Saban's career, and Georgia wanted to, take over, and they become the flag bearer of the SEC, especially with Nick Saban going. This could be a game, especially with Texas making the playoffs last year and now winning in dominant fashion. The schedule is the schedule. They played who they played. But if Texas goes in and boat races Georgia, is it at that point where the throne is kind of skipping Georgia? Because the media hype, and it's going to be a twofold thing. It's not just the put the play on the field. It's going to be the fact that Texas gets this unbelievable level of media hype. The level of media hype Texas gets is the same almost to the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Yankees. Okay? It's a crazy amount in this part. There's a insane amount of pressure on both of these squads, on both of these teams, because if Georgia loses this football game, all of a sudden, those voices and those questions are going to get louder and louder and louder. Again, I don't blame Kirby Smart for all of the off-field shenanigans that are going on there at Georgia, because a lot of those things are happening. These are, again, we talk about them being 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, 21, 22, depending on if they have their COVID year still. You are still a man and responsible for your own actions. College football coaches like to be in control. They like to do those things. But you are a man and you are responsible for your own actions. Whatever you do outside that. Georgia's got to man up. They have to look themselves in the mirror and say, we're better than this. We want to live up to the expectations. Because again, you get these 5-star talents all the time. I'm going to give you 2 names, Fresh. You probably never heard of them. Justin Zwick and Mike DeAndrea. 2 of the top-tier players that came out in the early 2000s for Ohio State. And they amounted to diddly squat for the Buckeyes. You take a look at all these guys who are given these high rating and they are 5-star players, and all of a sudden, nothing. And you're right. I think Georgia's lacking leadership. I really do think that they're lacking a level of leadership. Carson Beck, he's putting up some nice stats, but he's not that Stetson Bennett, like get in your face, like moxie type of player there. Yeah, talent-wise, is Carson Beck better? Absolutely. But he doesn't have the leadership. You named off all the guys they lost on the defensive side of the football. Where's that coming from? This Longhorns team has impressed me. The thing that I'm most impressed by, though, is the young linebackers that they have that have been playing out of their mind. I know offense is always going to get the love. You talk about what Quinn Ewers has done, what Arch Manning has done, what the running backs has done, Weisner, Blue, Gibson, all of those guys. We can sit here and talk about all the great things. But the defense has been what's really impressed me. Again, I know Texas hasn't faced a great offense this year, but they also have been one of the top defenses in the country. I expect Georgia to put up the most amount of points against Texas, but that isn't a knock on this Texas defense. Anthony Hill Jr. has been an absolute monster for them. You take a look at a guy like Simmons. Colin Simmons is a freshman for them, wreaking havoc on the field. This Texas team is looking like the Texas of old. And that really scares me. Texas they got through Red River, and first half they looked a little clunky, and then all of a sudden they turn it on and put the boots to Oklahoma. I think Texas is locked in. I think Texas is really focused in this football game. And I think that they have the stars. And you take a look at what it means for Texas, then what I always view as the national anthem of Texas is the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. You take a look at the stars are going to come to play here, Fresh. And I was thinking about this more and more. I get the feeling that this is going to be a big time Longhorns W. I think that it may – I'm worried because I know that they have the talent. I know Georgia has the talent to compete with Texas. I know that they can match up with them. It's just exactly like you said. It's that cloud that's hanging over the program that makes me concerned. I sent something to you out, not trying to troll you or do anything. I was legitimately asking, like, what in the world is happening right now? Like, this is completely un-Georgia. And we had a good conversation off air. And the more I sat there after having that conversation with you, the more I just kind of felt that Texas is going to be the win. Give me Texas and the points to cover, man. I'm going to say Texas by 9.
I mean, look, Texas is loaded. They have veteran quarterback play. They got a coach. The Dogs are going to have to play 4 quarters of truly focused, disciplined football. It's kind of they got to band together, batten down the hatches kind of thing. Because there's talent. 2 losses, you might see kids sort of just making business decisions, which you never want to say is good, but you're already past the transfer portal kind of sit out redshirt thing. But you start seeing guys make decisions because the playoffs are no longer there. Now this is also in the past, publicly they weren't getting money. The NIL didn't exist. Maybe guys were getting paid on the side. Who knows? Bag of cash here, bag of cash there. But now, if you're getting that massive NIL deal, you are expected to show up on game day. You are basically a professional athlete. And that's where, the stats are great. Carson Beck, where's the little fire? Where's that competitive fire? You have the Lambo out there. You have the great TikTok girlfriend, beautiful and all that. You're probably going to get drafted by the Raiders or the Giants. Good luck. You got to show up on Saturday if you want to get really truly paid. This is a business decision for you from that perspective. You and all those guys, scouts are going to be in the building. They'll remember what happened at the Georgia-Texas game. You made a lot of people, you pressed a lot of people late by the comeback versus Alabama, but you still need that full 60 minutes versus a top tier team. The Stetson Bennett years, they aren't looking at that Georgia team anymore. That back-to-back titles, they might as well have been 10 years ago. They're looking at the 24 version right now.
Right.
You blew your chance in 23 by losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game. You can't go back and have the committee give you the benefit of the doubt. You have to play here and play now. And it's a test. Are you able to rise up? NFL scouts are going to watch. But if you come into this football game and show up and play your tail off and give it a full 60 minutes, win, lose, or draw. But if you come out there and show effort and compete and you make it a brawl, they're going to remember you're a fighter. The committee is going to remember you're a fighter for a potential playoff spot down the road. If you come out there and lay another first half duck like you did versus Alabama, they're going to remember, all right, well, the slow start Dogs, here they are. They're a 2-quarter football team. I would hate to see that. I don't want to see. I think things better than that. But this is a mental thing. This is a being ready to go. And to quote Matt LaFleur, the coach of the Packers, is you piss hot or not? That's the thing. Are you ready to rock and roll? This is big boy football. You've got to be able to show up and get it done. Texas is going to be ready. Will you be on the other side?
All right, Fresh. Let's go to our brown water bets for the weekend here. Fresh, I had a rough weekend last weekend. I mean, I could not buy a bucket, to quote the great NBA Jam. Luckily, that LSU money line helped me out there. Fresh, first game we got from our producer, FSU going to the 5-1 Duke Blue Devils. This is a 7 p.m. kick in Durham. Right now, Duke is -3. Over-under is 42.5. What are you taking in this game?
Well, I think the records are great. We watched Florida State's defense actually hasn't been terrible. I think Florida State's defense shows up on Friday night. The offense, not with DJ Hewitt at the helm, they finally scored enough points. And that plus 130 money line for Florida State was too much to pass up. I'm taking the Noles on the road to get a big upset win, plus 130 for Florida State.
Wow, you're taking Florida State for the money line on that one. For some reason, I get the feeling the over's coming in on this one. 42.5 is real low in this regard. Duke has looked good enough to put up. Again, if Florida State's going to score a little bit here, life's too short to bet the under. So give me the over. Give me over 42.5.
Friday Night Lights in Durham, North Carolina. Should be a fun time.
All right, Fresh. Our other two games there are in the Big 12. Fresh, what game did you pick?
I'm taking Arizona State at Cincinnati. That classic Big 12 matchup. Give me the Sun Devils in Scatterbo money line plus 115. I couldn't believe they got the plus 115 money line there. But I'm taking the Sun Devils to win straight up.
Right. I looked at this. I was like, man, give me Arizona State as well. I went with Arizona in the plus 3.5 in this game, but I love Arizona to win outright in this. But I'll take the points in this one. All right, Fresh. My game I'm giving us, it's the Baylor Bears are traveling to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is only a 6.5-point favorite in this game. I got Texas Tech covering this easy.
Same. Cover the 6.5. I mean, it's a long way to Lubbock, Texas. There's nothing out there. But the Red Raiders will do it with Taj Boyd, that passing attack. They will get it done easily. It will not be a contest.
Right. Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Make sure you're checking out SpinnableSports.com. Yes, that is SpinnableSports.com, because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of SpinnableSports.com. Make sure you're liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on social media. Interact with us. Engage with us. Talk to us on the X, the Twitter, what have you. Comment, do whatever kids do these days with these videos, YouTube videos. Make fun of us. Tell us we know nothing. Tell us we're the smartest men alive because we chose your team to win this week. And say nice things about you. So usually that makes us happy. But we'll engage with you if you leave comments in our videos here. Fresh, that's all I got. It's been a fun weekend. Week number 8 is here. And we are slowly moving through this season. But we're going to blink and it's going to be done.
Big week this week. Everybody buckle up your chin straps. Got a lot of pads going to be popping. Hit us up on the socials. Hit us up on the YouTube channel. Spread the word. Join the love. And with that, we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.